If you don't like labels but still want answers, then listen close. If you're told your labs are normal but you feel collapsed, then sit with me. If you want to stay alive and be understood, then let's change the conversation. I'm Dee. Let's talk. Policies are shifting. Debates, bills, delays, but lived bodies tell another story. Highly sensitive people, firstborn caretakers, athletes who break from the inside. Your symptoms can be environmental, mold toxins, chronic stress. When medicine says fine, feeling broken isn't imaginary. We deserve nuanced, safer buildings and laws that recognize environmental harm. My mission: no one expires before they desire. If this resonates, stay.
In this video, we will learn why we suffer from addictions for the highly sensitive personal trainers and competitive athletes with a highly sensitive body. We will also uncover the science behind why many type A, overachieving people pleasers and competitive athletes expire before we desire. You are not alone. My heart is always open. I am a shy, parentified, petrified people pleaser who is living with life-threatening leaky body. And I hope this video is helpful for you, as it was for me making it. Stay tuned to the end of this video, and I have a tapping, grounding exercise to help seal the leaks of our life-threatening leaky body, brain, muscles, heart, and 40 other leaky body barriers. If the labs say you're fine and you're not fine, you'll learn why in this video. Message for the parentified personal trainers, highly sensitive and sovereign soul. To my tribe, the silent observers, the athletes that are highly competitive, and the ones who have spent their lives protecting everyone but themselves. Yesterday was Bell Let's Talk Day. In Canada, we use this day to speak about mental health. But for me, this day is a memorial. It is a day of ghosts. I'm dedicating this to Sean Simpson, a powerhouse athlete who we lost on this day just 1 year ago. I'm carrying Glenn Thompson, a bright varsity light lost in '92. I'm carrying my mother, my stepmother, my ex-partner's brother, and my stepson, who we lost at just 24, who struggled lifelong with mental health struggles. And I carry Robin Williams, whose light first reached me in the 70s. All of them were bright lights. Most of them were athletes, and all of them were suffering in a way that no doctor could name. I know the suffering. Since the age of 5, I have been dancing with death. I call her my tiny dancer, even though I have always lived a life of love, childlike wonder, and a deep connection to the universe. I have been bartering with my life. Since I was 5 years old, hope is the only thing that kept me in the dance. For many of us, the dark thoughts aren't a character flaw. They are a biological reaction to a world that is too loud. I live with a gene called misophonia. It means sounds aren't just noises. They are physical attacks on my nervous system. Science shows us that this gene heightens dark thoughts, especially in 16-year-old girls and 24-year-old boys. When you combine a noisy brain with sick building syndrome and leaky body barriers, the pain becomes unbearable. This is why we can't stop at one drink. Alcohol isn't our problem. It was our only mute button for a world that was leaking into our souls. We weren't addicts. Release the shame. We were sensitive systems under siege, trying to self-medicate a system collapse that no one told us was physical. I was in a hospital bed, bleeding and broken, trying to uncover why I was sick while working in moldy gyms when I heard Robin Williams had passed. That was the moment I realized the mental is physical. I am your Mama Lovey Dee. I am 60 years old, born in the fire of '66, and I have finally learned how to seal the leaks. We are going to talk about the 40 barriers. We are going to talk about the 30 grams of protein anchors, the mold detox, and the autophagy that clears the ghosts. You will find all of this on Substack at Dee's Dharma. The link will be in the comments. To the parentified souls who have been taking care of the world, it's time to let me take care of you. We are going to reparent ourselves back to health. We are going to turn the volume down and the peace up.
Did you know that 35% of elite athletes struggle with mental health concerns, yet most suffer in silence? Today, we're exploring a revolutionary approach to healing that's changing how we think about athletic recovery. We'll discover why being a highly sensitive athlete might actually be your superpower, how environmental factors affect performance, and the groundbreaking science behind healing shame through methylation biology. And joining us today is an expert in athletic recovery and environmental medicine. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. You know, what's fascinating is that we're finally understanding that athlete sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's actually a form of intelligence.
Wait, what do you mean by that? That seems counterintuitive to everything we've been taught about mental toughness in sports.
Well, according to recent research, when athletes experience heightened sensitivity to their environment, it's often their body's sophisticated warning system at work.
So you're saying that what we've often dismissed as being too sensitive might actually be a biological advantage?
Exactly. Studies show that athletes often have more refined nervous systems that can detect environmental stressors before others notice them.
That's fascinating. But how does this connect to the shame and addiction cycles we see in competitive sports?
Research indicates that nearly 50% of athletes report experiencing shame about their performance, and this often leads to maladaptive coping mechanisms.
Those are pretty striking numbers.
And here's where it gets interesting. This shame response isn't just psychological. It actually affects methylation patterns in the body.
Okay, you've lost me there. What exactly is methylation?
Think of methylation as your body's master control system. It's a biochemical process that affects everything from tissue repair to energy production.
And how does this connect to athletic performance?
When athletes have impaired methylation, they often experience slower recovery, reduced tissue strength, and increased injury risk.
That sounds serious. What causes these methylation issues?
Environmental factors play a huge role. Everything from training facility air quality to exposure to certain chemicals can impact methylation.
So it's not just about mental toughness or training harder?
Not at all. In fact, the research shows that athletes who push through environmental sensitivity often end up with more severe health issues.
Let's talk about solutions. What can athletes do to address these issues?
The first step is understanding that sensitivity is valid. Studies show that self-compassion techniques can reduce the emotional toll of shame by up to 40%.
That's a significant improvement.
And when combined with environmental awareness and proper methylation support, athletes often see dramatic improvements in both performance and recovery.
Can you give us some specific examples of environmental factors athletes should be aware of?
Research shows that mold exposure in training facilities can significantly impact athletic performance and recovery.
Really? I wouldn't have thought mold would be such a big issue.
It's actually one of the most overlooked factors. Athletes with mold exposure often show symptoms that get misdiagnosed as mental health issues.
How can athletes tell if environmental factors are affecting them?
Common signs include unexplained fatigue, difficulty recovering from workouts, and heightened emotional sensitivity.
Those could be mistaken for overtraining, right?
Exactly, and that's part of the problem. Many athletes push harder when they should actually be addressing environmental factors.
Let's talk about the shame cycle. How does understanding these biological factors help break that cycle?
Research shows that when athletes understand the biological basis of their symptoms, shame decreases significantly.
Because it's not a personal failure, it's a biological response?
Precisely. And this understanding often leads to more effective recovery strategies.
What about the addiction component? How does that tie in?
Studies show that substance use in athletes often starts as self-medication for underlying environmental and biological stressors.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
And addressing these root causes through proper methylation support and environmental awareness often reduces addictive behaviors.
Can you explain more about how methylation affects recovery?
Methylation is crucial for collagen synthesis, which directly impacts tissue repair and injury recovery in athletes.
So proper methylation could actually prevent injuries?
Research suggests it can significantly reduce injury risk and improve recovery times.
What about the emotional aspects of recovery?
Methylation also plays a crucial role in neurotransmitter production, affecting mood and emotional resilience.
So it's really a whole body approach?
Exactly. The research shows that addressing both physical and emotional aspects leads to better outcomes.
What's the first step an athlete should take if they're struggling?
Start by assessing your environment. Look for potential triggers like mold, poor air quality, or toxic cleaning products.
That seems more manageable than completely overhauling training.
And it often has more immediate benefits. Many athletes see improvements within weeks of addressing environmental factors.
What about team environments? How can athletes address these issues in a group setting?
Research shows that teams who address environmental factors together see improved performance across the board.
It could actually become a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. Teams that prioritize environmental health often see reduced injury rates and better recovery times.
As we wrap up, what's the most important message for athletes listening?
Your sensitivity is not a weakness, it's a sophisticated warning system that can help optimize your performance.
That's really powerful.
And remember, addressing environmental factors and methylation can break the cycle of shame and addiction. Your body whispers before it screams. That's what elite athletes are discovering as their finely tuned systems react to environmental threats most of us miss. Today, we're exploring why being sensitive isn't a weakness, it's your body's intelligence speaking. We'll uncover how environmental factors affect athletic performance, why some athletes are more susceptible than others, and how to transform this sensitivity into strength.
You know, this is such a crucial conversation. Recent research shows that between 5% and 35% of elite athletes report mental health disorders. But what's fascinating is how many of these issues might actually be their bodies responding to environmental stressors.
That's a surprisingly high number. What's driving this?
Well, according to recent studies, athletes work in what we call a pressure cooker environment. They're constantly pushing their bodies to the limit while dealing with aggressive competition and perfectionist mindsets.
And I imagine that makes them more susceptible to environmental factors?
Exactly. Their bodies are like highly calibrated instruments. Research shows that when there's an imbalance between their resources and environmental demands, it can trigger immediate physical and psychological stress responses.
That's fascinating. So their sensitivity is actually a form of intelligence?
Precisely. It's like having an early warning system. These athletes' bodies are often the first to detect environmental threats, whether it's poor air quality, toxic environments, or other stressors.
But I'm guessing this isn't how it's typically viewed in sports culture?
No, unfortunately not. There's still this misconception that being tough means you should just push through. But recent studies show that this approach can lead to serious burnout.
Can you tell us more about this burnout connection?
A fascinating study from 2025 found that resilience is actually a crucial factor in preventing athlete burnout. It's not about being less sensitive, it's about having better coping strategies.
That's really interesting. How does this relate to environmental factors specifically?
Well, research shows that athletes who are more attuned to their environment often experience what we call environmental overwhelm, similar to how young people experience climate anxiety.
Wait, there's a connection to climate anxiety?
Yes, studies show that both groups, sensitive athletes and climate-conscious youth, share this heightened awareness of their environment. It's not paranoia, it's perception.
That's a fascinating parallel I hadn't considered before.
And here's what's really interesting. Research indicates that this sensitivity can actually be a competitive advantage when properly understood and managed.
How so?
Well, these athletes often detect performance-affecting changes in their environment before they become obvious problems. It's like having an early warning system built into your body.
That's actually pretty incredible when you think about it.
And recent studies show that when athletes learn to trust these signals instead of fighting them, their performance often improves.
But I imagine that's easier said than done in competitive sports?
Absolutely. The research shows that about 91% of athletes experience stress related to their sports participation. That's a staggering number.
Those numbers are really eye-opening.
And what's particularly concerning is that many athletes are told their symptoms are just mental when their bodies are actually responding to real environmental threats.
That must be incredibly frustrating for them.
It is, and studies show this dismissal can lead to increased burnout and mental health challenges.
So how do we start changing this narrative?
Recent research suggests we need to start by acknowledging that sensitivity in athletes isn't a weakness, it's a sophisticated monitoring system.
That's such an important reframe.
And the data backs this up. Studies show that athletes who learn to work with their sensitivity rather than against it show better long-term performance outcomes.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like?
Sure. Research indicates that athletes who pay attention to their environmental sensitivities often catch early warning signs of overtraining or environmental toxicity before they become serious issues.
That's actually a huge advantage.
Exactly. And recent studies show that when athletes are supported in trusting these instincts, their resilience actually increases.
Let's talk about sleep. I noticed it came up in the research.
Yes, fascinating findings there. A 2024 study found that sleep disruptions actually predict increases in athlete burnout. It's not just about being tired.
That's really interesting. How does that connect to environmental sensitivity?
Well, the research shows that environmental factors often affect sleep first, making it a key indicator of environmental stress on the body.
So poor sleep could be an early warning sign?
Exactly. Studies indicate that sleep disruption often precedes other symptoms of environmental overwhelm in athletes.
That's really valuable information for athletes and coaches.
And what's particularly interesting is that this sensitivity to environmental factors tends to be higher in high-performing athletes.
Why is that?
Research suggests it's because their bodies are operating at such optimal levels that any environmental disruption becomes more noticeable.
Like a finely tuned racing car versus a regular vehicle?
That's a great analogy. And just like a racing car, these athletes need the right environment to perform at their best.
So what can we do to better support these sensitive athletes?
Recent studies emphasize the importance of creating what they call psychosocial resources, support systems that help athletes interpret and respond to their environmental sensitivities.
That sounds really important.
It is. Research shows these support systems can significantly reduce burnout risk and improve performance outcomes.
Are there any specific strategies that have proven effective?
Yes, studies highlight the importance of problem-focused coping strategies and environmental awareness training.
And these actually help performance?
Absolutely. The research shows that athletes who develop these skills often experience better long-term outcomes both in their sport and overall well-being.
This really changes how we should think about sensitive athletes.
It does. The evidence clearly shows that sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's a sophisticated monitoring system that can enhance performance when properly understood.
So what's the key takeaway for athletes listening to this?
The research is clear. Trust your body's intelligence. If you're sensing environmental impacts others don't notice, that's not weakness, it's awareness.
And for coaches and support staff?
Studies show that creating supportive environments that validate these experiences leads to better outcomes than pushing athletes to ignore their sensitivities.
This really changes the conversation around sensitivity in sports.
It does, and the research supports this shift. We need to start seeing sensitivity as a strength, not a weakness.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Co-Pilot Podcasts. Remember, if you're an athlete who's been told you're too sensitive, maybe you're actually just more aware. Your body isn't broken, it's brilliant. You know that friend who always tells someone with addiction to just try harder? Well, they're not just wrong, they're scientifically wrong. Today, we're diving into why addiction isn't a moral failing, but a complex biological and environmental response, especially for highly sensitive trauma survivors. We'll explore the neuroscience behind it and discover why sensitivity might actually be a superpower in recovery.
And it's fascinating how much our understanding has evolved.
The National Institute on Drug Abuse has completely transformed how we view addiction, from a moral failing to a chronic brain disease that affects reward pathways, decision-making, and emotional regulation.
Wait, so you're saying it actually changes the brain structure?
Exactly. Research shows that addiction alters brain structure and function similarly to other chronic illnesses. It's not about willpower, it's about very real changes in the brain's chemistry and architecture.
That's mind-blowing. So how does trauma play into this?
Well, according to recent studies, trauma creates lasting changes in the brain's stress response system. When someone experiences trauma, especially during critical developmental periods, it can fundamentally alter how their brain processes emotions and responds to stress. And here's where it gets really interesting. For highly sensitive people, this effect can be even more pronounced because they process experiences more deeply than others.
Can you explain what you mean by highly sensitive people?
Sure. Highly sensitive people, or HSPs, are individuals who process sensory information more deeply than others. They feel everything more intensely, both the highs and the lows.
That sounds exhausting.
It can be. And you know what's fascinating? Research shows that HSPs process dopamine differently than others. It's like their brain's reward system is set to high definition.
That reminds me of how some people can't handle caffeine, like how one person's morning coffee is another person's anxiety attack.
That's actually a perfect analogy. And it helps explain why some HSPs might be more vulnerable to using substances as a way to cope with overwhelming experiences.
But doesn't that mean HSPs are destined to develop addiction?
Actually, no, and this is really important. Recent research found no direct link between high sensitivity and substance use disorders. It's not the sensitivity itself that's the problem, it's the coping mechanisms people develop to deal with it.
That's surprising. Can you elaborate?
Well, many HSPs turn to substances initially as a way to mute their heightened sensations or to feel more comfortable in social situations. It's like trying to turn down the volume on a world that feels too loud.
So it starts as a survival strategy?
Exactly. And when you add trauma to the mix, it becomes even more complex. The brain is already working overtime to process experiences deeply, and then trauma creates additional stress on the system.
Let's talk about the environmental factors. How do they influence this whole picture?
Environmental factors are crucial. Research shows that things like poverty, lack of support, chronic stress, and unstable environments significantly increase addiction risk. These aren't personal failures, they're circumstances that can overwhelm anyone's coping mechanisms.
That makes so much sense.
And for HSPs, these environmental factors can be even more impactful because they're processing everything more deeply.
So what does this mean for treatment? Do HSPs need a different approach?
According to recent studies, yes. Traditional recovery environments can actually be overwhelming for HSPs. Think about crowded rehab centers or intense group therapy sessions. These can be incredibly stimulating for someone who processes everything deeply.
That must make recovery even more challenging.
It can, but here's where it gets interesting. That same sensitivity that makes recovery challenging can actually become a powerful tool for healing.
How so?
Well, HSPs often have heightened intuition and emotional awareness. Once they learn to work with their sensitivity rather than against it, they can become incredibly attuned to their triggers and early warning signs.
So it's like turning a perceived weakness into a strength?
Exactly. And research supports this. When HSPs develop healthy coping mechanisms and learn to regulate their nervous systems, they often experience more profound and lasting recovery.
What are some of these healthy coping mechanisms?
Studies show that techniques like mindfulness, somatic work, and EMDR therapy can be particularly effective for HSPs in recovery. These approaches help regulate the nervous system without substances.
And what about the trauma aspect? How do we address that?
That's crucial. The National Institute on Drug Abuse emphasizes that trauma-informed care is essential. This means creating safe, predictable environments and understanding that what looks like resistance might actually be a trauma response.
Right, because the trauma and the sensitivity are interconnected.
Exactly. And this is where understanding the brain science becomes so important. We're not just dealing with behaviors, we're working with a complex interplay of neural pathways, trauma responses, and sensory processing.
It's fascinating how all these pieces fit together.
And what's really encouraging is that the brain has remarkable plasticity. Even after trauma and addiction, it can form new neural pathways and healing patterns.
That's incredibly hopeful.
It is. And it's why we need to move away from this idea of addiction as a moral failing. The science clearly shows it's about brain chemistry, trauma response, and environmental factors.
Speaking of environment, how can we create more supportive spaces for HSPs in recovery?
Research indicates that HSPs thrive in calm, structured environments with clear boundaries. This might mean smaller group sessions, quieter spaces, and more individual attention.
That makes sense.
And it's important to remember that these aren't special accommodations. They're essential elements for effective treatment based on neuroscience and trauma research.
Do you think this understanding is becoming more widespread?
Yes, thankfully. The medical community is increasingly recognizing addiction as a chronic brain disease rather than a character flaw. This shift is supported by numerous studies showing the biological basis of addiction.
That must be relieving for people struggling with addiction.
Absolutely. When people understand that their struggles aren't due to personal weakness, it often makes them more willing to seek help and stick with treatment.
And for HSPs specifically?
For HSPs, understanding their sensitivity as a trait rather than a flaw can be transformative. It helps them work with their nature instead of against it.
That's powerful.
And what's really interesting is that many HSPs in recovery report feeling more alive and connected once they learn to embrace their sensitivity rather than numb it.
So sensitivity could actually be a superpower in recovery?
Exactly. When properly supported, that deep processing ability can lead to more profound healing and stronger recovery outcomes.
This really changes how we should think about addiction treatment.
It does. We need to move away from one-size-fits-all approaches and recognize that factors like sensitivity and trauma require personalized treatment strategies.
What's the most important takeaway for our listeners?
That addiction isn't about moral failure or lack of willpower. It's about brain chemistry, trauma response, and how we process our experiences. And with the right support and understanding, recovery is absolutely possible.
Even for those who feel things more deeply than others.
Especially for them. Because once you learn to work with your sensitivity rather than against it, it becomes a powerful tool for healing and growth.
For the parentified soul, the one who has spent a lifetime being the strong one, while their own nervous system was screaming from the noise of the world, because you have misophonia, we are going to focus on the physical sensation of sound and the leaky feeling of being overwhelmed. We are going to do a tapping. Use 2 fingers to tap gently but firmly on these points while reading or speaking the words. Tap the side of the hand, the karate chop point, and say, "Even though the world is too loud and my body feels like it's leaking, I am safe in this moment. Even though I've been dancing with death since I was 5, I am choosing to dance with life today. I honor my sensitive ears, my big heart, and my Buddha belly. I am reparenting myself now." Let's begin at the top of the head with the 2 fingers and repeat this high sensitivity to the world. Now over the eyebrow, the sounds that feel like an attack. Side of the eye, the dark thoughts that come when the volume is too high. Under the eye, continue tapping, the weight of carrying everyone else's noise. under the nose, this leaky feeling in my brain and my body, on the chin, the exhaustion of being the strong one since I was a child, collarbone, the sound of the world hitting my 40 barriers, under the arm, it's not my fault, it's my biology. Back to the top of the head, continue tapping with 2 fingers and repeating, I am sealing the leaks now. Top of the eyebrow, I am turning down the volume of the world. Side of the eye, I am turning up the volume of my own soul peace. Under the eye, my eyes are a gift even when they hurt and leak. Under the nose, I am safe in my home temple. Chin, I am giving my tiny dancer a rest. Collarbone, I am hitting my 30 grams of protein. I'm building my walls back. Under the arm, I am your mama lovey child, and I am protected. I am your guardian, here to protect your peace as your soul peace doula. Top of the head, 2 fingers tapping. I release the trauma. I keep the wonder. I am sovereign. Pause and feel what's coming up. If you feel a yawn coming or if your eyes water, that's your nervous system unfreezing. That is a leak being sealed.